right, welcome everyone back to the GOATcast podcast. If you're here in the States, this is a start of a pretty great week because this is Thanksgiving week. I am CW, and I'm sure my man over here is going to tell you about his week so far.
Yeah, man, like I got the entire week off. It's been great. I've been vibing, I've been chilling, catching up on my sleep. So I'm good over here.
Some of us ain't got it like him, so that's Mr. Moneybags over there. So just want to welcome you all back to the GOATcast podcast. Thank you all for your support so far for the channel. Please continue to like and subscribe to the channel. Also, if you want to catch these episodes, if you're on the run, if you got Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, you can check us out there. Our Monday shows will all be uploaded there. Midweek Mayhem will stay here on YouTube. So NBA this week has been pretty interesting. We've continued with the in-season tournament, and unfortunately, during one of them, Draymond Green decided to audition for his next phase in entertainment, and he showed some UFC moves out there and put big old Rudy Gobert in a headlock, which has caused him to be suspended for 5 games, mostly due to his past transgressions on the court. So what are your thoughts on Draymond Green and his actions during that opening Timberwolves little scuffle?
Yeah, so just looking back on that night, it was a later game, so I couldn't catch it like initially because I had work that next morning. But obviously it was like 2 minutes into the game. So let's look back before we get into that game. Let's look back to that previous game where, the Minnesota Timberwolves, they played a really good game against the Warriors. You heard a little bit of chirping between, Ant-Man and Draymond. I think Draymond had fouled him a certain way. Ant-Man was just saying like, dang. And, they started, jawing back and forth. Turns my man Ant-Man to prime MJ in the fourth quarter. He proceeds to torch them. And, they get that dub. Then they play again. And for the in-season tournament matchup, I think you could say emotions kind of trickled over a little bit. I'm not really sure, like, how everything started. Like, I know that Klay Thompson and, what's the dude's name?
Jaden
McDaniels, yeah. McDaniels, they got into it. I think it started with like Klay with a little shove or something to like the jersey. They started kind of like scuffling a little bit, and then Rudy Gobert comes in and he kind of like grabs Klay from behind. I guess initially it looked like he was trying to break it up, but I guess when emotions kind of spilling over from the last game and you got like another person from a different team who Rudy Gobert grabbed Klay Thompson, the Warriors teammate, not his own teammate, Jaden McDaniels. So I can see why Draymond, like you said, auditioned for his next career in UFC as he proceeds to put this man in a hold. It's stuff like that. I feel like you see that like every day, like just like pickup basketball. You don't really see that more in professional settings, but I think the same rules still apply. Like if you think about it from Draymond's perspective, think of it like your brother or one of your good friends, because him, Curry, and Klay, like they've been together for a long time. They probably consider themselves pretty much brothers.
Yeah.
So could you imagine your brother getting into it, like a little one-on-one, little scuffle with somebody, and then someone grabs him out of nowhere? You don't know what his intentions are. It could be to hold him down, like how Charles Barkley did to Larry Bird back in the day, where he grabbed him and Dr. J got the boom him. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of emotions in that game. So truthfully, I don't blame Draymond. I don't think he should have held on to him for quite as long as he did. But I guess just in terms of that incident, I can't really blame him. I mean, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, I get it, and in retrospect, in hindsight, I should say, Rudy Gobert didn't follow the proper protocol when it comes to those little scuffles. You're supposed to grab your own teammate and leave the other teammates alone. Let their teammates, handle that. So he was in the wrong for that. But I think Draymond I think what made it so bad was him holding on to the headlock for so long. And I think that was the optic that gave a lot of people ammo to really go at Draymond, because in a way he's being a good teammate. He's getting the much bigger Rudy Gobert off of his teammate. He doesn't know what Rudy's going to do. It's everything's kind of in the heat of the moment, like you said. So him coming at him and just grabbing him to get him off of him, okay, that was most players wouldn't have gotten nearly as much flack for doing that, but Draymond. But the thing is, Draymond held on to it way too long. In a chokehold like that, it's easy to when you have somebody in a headlock like that, if you're really applying pressure, you can knock that guy out. You can go to sleep. So you don't want, him doing that is possibly causing huge harm in a scuffle that shouldn't even, it was meaningless pretty much, other than, it's an in-season tournament. Who cares? Or, well, we'll talk about that later. But, it's just a game. He could have just gotten Rudy off of him and proceeded to try to lighten what's going on, but he held on, and that's why I think everyone was up in arms for that. I think because of his past transgressions, his past history of doing certain things, stomping on Sabonis, kicking Steven Adams, things like that, getting into it with LeBron. He's getting into it with players that normally do not, those guys are usually pretty stable guys, but he's brought out a different side of certain guys. Even Donovan Mitchell, who's usually pretty cool-headed, he got him to, get a little animated. So I think that because of that, Draymond was in the wrong, and I think he deserved the 5 games. I personally thought it would be more because of just the visual of Rudy Gobert being just dragged down by his neck and having a headlock around. You can't have that, and I understand it. Ever since Malice in the Palace, the NBA has had to implement something to kind of control emotions and try to de-escalate things really quickly. So I understand that, and as much as we talk about this era being soft, there's many reasons why they have to do that and have to take that kind of control over games, because you saw what happened there. You don't want fans getting involved, and you don't want, that stigma to be put on you anymore. So I get it. I understand why Joe Dumars did it. Do I fault Draymond? Yes. Draymond could have had a little more self-control and let go of that after, Rudy Gobert was dislodged from Clay, but he kept going. So that's my 2 cents. Do you think that this is another blemish for the Golden State Warriors? Should the Golden State Warriors take a little more action on Draymond, or try to really reel him in more? Even though, Draymond's going to be Draymond, at some point, somebody will have to do something to, because you can lose. As we saw, they potentially lost the championship due to his antics. So what's your thoughts on what should the Warriors as an organization do to kind of try to get the guy on the straight and narrow?
Well, it's kind of hard, especially this late in his career, for any corrective actions to really like be instilled into him. I think you could have a couple conversations with him, bench him, do whatever. But at the end of the day, this is Draymond Green, and it kind of goes back to that quote that he had where everybody was getting on him, telling him how to be Draymond Green, and he said that, how would y'all feel if I told y'all how to be yourselves? He's Draymond Green. He says he's the best at being Draymond Green, and obviously that's true.
Yeah.
But it's to the detriment of the team at times when he lets his emotions kind of get out of control. So in terms of what the Warriors should do, I mean, there's really not much they can do unless you just decide to up and trade him. Which I don't really see them doing that. There's not much value you can get out of him. He doesn't really fit with a lot of teams. His particular skill set really helps the Warriors. So I think I don't see any other contender who could pick him up right now, and he would move the needle to a terribly good degree, I guess. But I just think this is just who he is. I think everybody needs to stop expecting him to change. They just need to accept him for who he is, and all this stuff comes with it. And if you don't like him, I guess you could try to trade him. I'm not sure what you could get for him at this stage in his career, but
yeah, I think they're in a tough situation because you look at it now, especially since they came out and said this suspension is based off of his past. And now when refs are officiating games for the Warriors, Draymond's going to be under a microscope now. So you got to think, as Steve Kerr and everybody as Golden State Warriors, now we may be refereed a little differently than other teams. Stuff that other players might get away with, Draymond probably won't get away with it. So they're gonna be quick to tee him up. They're gonna be quick to give him a flagrant or something like that just because of his past. So now Draymond may have to change his style up a little bit. But if Draymond's gonna be Draymond, then there could be some issues there. Will that hurt the Warriors in the long run? It's definitely hurting them right now because he's out, Steph's out, and there's an APB out on Klay Thompson. So we're going to transition into the Golden State Warriors, and they had a pretty hot start. I was not too impressed with their offseason recruits, but they started off pretty good. I thought Chris Paul was playing well. Everybody was kind of doing the things they needed to do to make that team work. I think they're way undersized, but it hadn't shown for the first 5-6 games. Now that we're getting a little deeper, 10, 13 games, some teams, now we're starting to see how much they need all of their players, especially Steph, and now especially Draymond, now that Klay is having a little trouble. You want to speak on Klay and the Warriors as a whole, as they have, as the season has gone on, and they're looking a little bit suspect right now?
Well, I guess to start, before I get into the Warriors, I do want to say that this little altercation with the Timberwolves and how no one really stepped up to help Rudy Gobert, I think that says a lot about that ball club. And I think the quickness that you saw, the sense of urgency that Draymond had as soon as Rudy even touched Klay Thompson, then even nothing really bad had happened yet. It's just the idea that something could happen was enough to send him over the edge, and he went after him immediately. And when you see one of your teammates, choked up in a headlock, and Ant and Cat were just standing there they were
right there. Cat was right there.
And if I'm Rudy Gobert, there's a players meeting we gotta have, because could nobody get him off him? Not one of them players on that team. And Cat looks like a pretty big guy. Ant seems like a pretty strong guy, but not one of them even touched. Karl Anthony Towns, he did kind of grab Draymond, but he wasn't doing nothing. He didn't grab his neck. He didn't, give him a two-piece combo.
Yeah, back in the day, that would have been a two-piece to
exactly
for Draymond. So that is a good take. I did see that, and I believe someone spoke on that. That why was Karl Anthony Towns just standing there, and his teammates getting dragged to the ground in a chokehold, and you're right there? Why was there no retaliation or anything? So. So there may be a little bit of something going on there in Minnesota with those guys, but maybe they're not used to scuffles like that.
I mean, if y'all gonna talk, because even Rudy Gobert, I've seen him show more emotion when he was punching his own teammate, Kyle Anderson.
Hey, that's true.
He fired him one on the bench just for some verbal altercation they had, but he ain't gonna try to go after Draymond. None of that. A lot of that stuff on Timberwolves side don't make a lot of sense to me. I still love them as a team, and I still think they can still go far, but they need to address this right now.
Cheap plug. Watch Midweek Mayhem for one of the spiciest hot takes of the year. My man said that the Minnesota Timberwolves are better than both LA teams, which I can agree with one of them. I believe you said Phoenix Suns. Check out Midweek Mayhem if you want to hear about that.
Sure.
But are the Warriors in trouble? Are they really not the Warriors that we may have thought they were at the beginning of the season?
So I think it stems on a couple things, and I'm really looking at two players in particular. So first of all, what you see from Steph Curry at his age, nothing short of phenomenal. Can't take it away from him at all. Averaging 30 points a game. He's clearly carrying the load on this team. But this is a team sport, and you need your other players to step up. And when I say two people, I'm looking at Klay Thompson and Andrew Wiggins. They lost the last 6 games in a row. But let me interest you with Klay Thompson. So 13 games, he has averaged 14 points on 13 attempts. All right. So far, not so good. He's shooting 40% from the field, 33% from the three-point line. Those numbers are definitely not good at all, right? No way you slice it. These are his lowest shooting splits since his rookie season. Sad part is I'd still want him on the Lakers, but that's another conversation.
Oh, man.
So the next person for Wiggins, he's averaging through 14 games, 12 points on 12 attempts. That's not good. 42.9 from the field, 22.2 from the three, which is abysmal to say the least. So when you got like two of your key guys, I'm not even going to get into what Draymond averages. Triple single. That's his name for a reason. So I don't need to get in his numbers. He ain't really there to fill the stat sheet. He's just there to be an enforcer. Let's be honest. But when you two offensive punches, Klay and Wiggins aren't producing, and you don't have a Jordan Poole who can spell for one of them, going through a shooting slump, the Warriors could be in trouble. They had a tough game against OKC last night. Went down to the wire. Steph did come back that game, and he played pretty well. He's a little rusty, but he played for the most part just like Steph Curry normally would. Chet Holmgren, he's that guy. He's, making a good case for Rookie of the Year with that 36, 35 point a game performance. Clutch 3 at the end. Hey, I'm just saying. And SGA dropped 40. They might be a sleeper too. I didn't include them because I wanted to talk about the Thunder more in detail at a later date. But yeah, just to wrap it up, they're going to miss Draymond for these next couple games. I think they got the Rockets coming up. They're a pretty decently sized team. And then they have a couple other tough games where I think Draymond's presence is going to be missed, especially in the interior. But yeah, I could definitely see them sliding a little bit more. I don't think this is I think it's still too soon to say we're going to be worried about the Warriors. But definitely Wiggins and Klay definitely need to pick up their act, or they could be in the play-in instead of a top 5 seed.
Well, if I'm a Warrior fan, I'm a bit worried because, as I said many weeks ago, before the season even started, they are way too undersized. Even though that works when everybody offensively is clicking, Andrew Wiggins is being Andrew Wiggins and Klay Thompson is being Klay Thompson, you can get away with being, their little small ball lineups. But when the game slows down and you're missing, a Draymond who can kind of run the offense for you, besides Steph, if you're missing him, and you got Chris Paul, but CP3's he's doing a little something, but he can't get you 20 a night like he used to. So he's old. I mean, yeah. So if I'm a Warriors fan, I'm a little bit more worried. And I think that with, teams like Houston, Utah, these teams are sneaky good, and they can make some noise as the season progresses. They're young. They're way younger than the Warriors. They can sneak and win some of these, these close games. And I think that I see the play-in tournament in the Golden State Warriors' future. So I don't think I was starting to get high on them too once the season started and saw how well CP3 integrated into their team. But right now they're looking, but there's a lot of teams looking bad. So it's still young. The season's still young. So they could surprise me again and go off, win 20 games in a row. But so right now they are looking pretty good in the in-season tournament. The in-season tournament started this year, and I guess it's a way to get some early eyes on the sport because, usually for the NBA, it's kind of, you watch it in certain spurts. You watch opening week, then you wait till Christmas. You're definitely gonna watch it during Christmas, then right before or after the trade deadline. And of course, when seeding start mattering, you start watching it towards playoff time. But, they want to get some interest in the game early on. And so they came up with the concept of an in-season tournament. And it's been going on for the last, 2-3 weeks. It'll continue, and December 4th, it will start the knockout rounds. So I'm going to go really quick, or we can kind of talk about how it's going so far. The East Group A, which comprised of the Indiana Pacers, Sixers, Cavs, Hawks, and Pistons right now. Actually, the Pacers are on top, 2-0 right now. How you feel about, do you think that's kind of playing out how you thought, or?
I think, yeah, I mean, I had the Pacers in there for like a good second place. Like, they're a good team. I think Kelly Oubre going down for the Sixers hurt them to not a significant degree, but it definitely shows that they miss him and his offensive production. Pacers are clicking. So, I mean, it's no surprise that they're number one. And I think it's going to be those two teams. These other teams aren't really going to do too much for me.
No hope in the Atlanta Hawks?
Nah.
All right, Group B, we got the Bucks 2-0, Miami 2-0. The Knicks in third place, the Hornets and Washington Wizards. Who cares? We know they're not going to make it. So that's pretty much spot on to what you had to say earlier. You had Miami and Milwaukee in those top two spots, and then Knicks being a wild card. So it's panned out pretty much like we thought. East Group C, Boston, Brooklyn, Orlando, Toronto, and Chicago. Boston up 2-0, Brooklyn 2-1. You see any challenges in there for the Celtics?
I mean, no, not like I said, not really. Like I said, the Nets gave them a good game, but Cam Thomas being out, definitely not a good sign for the Brooklyn Nets and any hope of them taking that one seed in the East Group C. So
we'll transition over to West Coast. West Group A, the Lakers looking good. Utah Jazz, Phoenix Suns, Trailblazers, and Grizzlies. Lakers, all right, they're 3-0. So Lakers are doing what they should in a week. The Suns, I mean, Bradley Beal's back on the injury list. Booker's back, I think, pretty much. Hopefully he can stay in the lineup, but they're injury prone. So no surprise there, really, other than maybe Utah being in second place, but Utah is a good young team.
Mm-hmm.
West Group
differential though, 42 for the Lakers. We lit. We super lit.
Playing the Grizzlies, the Blazers, and I mean, if they couldn't do that, they shouldn't be in the NBA. But Group B, the Pelicans, Nuggets, Rockets, Mavs, and Clippers. That was a beast of a group. Right now, the Pelicans and Nuggets. Pelicans got a big win, I believe Friday it was, over the Nuggets. So they're atop of that one. Surprise you any?
It would be more surprising if the Nuggets were full strength, but no Jamal Murray. They're still number two. They're still in the picture. Like I said, I don't think they really care that much about it, but not really surprised, no.
Another cheap plug for Midweek Mayhem. I have to admit when I'm wrong. I said the Pelicans would be trading Zion by trade deadline by the end of the season, and then Zion decides to go play the best basketball of his career following that. So, I'll admit I was wrong. I was wrong. Okay, so Group C out west, we got Sacramento Kings, the Timberwolves, the Warriors, the Thunder. I ain't gonna say the last team, Spurs. They're not even in it anymore.
That's your team.
You saw them last night against the Grizzlies.
Yeah.
Come on, any surprises there? I think we were consensus that the Warriors were going to sneak out of that one. But right now, the Kings and Timberwolves are ahead of the pack. What you think?
I think the Timberwolves are definitely backing up my sentiments toward them. I definitely say the Kings have definitely looked a lot better than I thought. The Warriors definitely not as strong as I thought either. So that's probably the biggest surprise, because I thought they would still handle the Kings and Timberwolves relatively easily, albeit with a little bit more degree of difficulty than they're accustomed to doing against those teams. But yeah, I'm surprised the Warriors are so low, and the Thunder. I thought the Thunder were going to be a lot better, and they've slipped down to 1-2, which I kind of thought they were going to be at least 2-1. I didn't expect that. So that's a big surprise for me.
Thunders aren't where I thought they would. I thought they would probably be battling Golden State for those top two spots, but they're at the bottom of the pack. And of course, the Spurs, they're challenging nothing because they are absolute trash. So, the in-season tournament, are you liking it? What you think about it? Is it working for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good idea. I think it works. As the first go round, this is fine. There's probably be a little bit more tweaks and adjustments that you can make. But yeah, for now, this is okay. I'm good with how it is right now.
Okay. Do you think that the gameplay, do you think the teams actually care on the court that these are these incidents? I mean, they try to make little comments about it. I've seen some people talk about it. Even I think LeBron said something about it. But do you think they actually care about this?
I think you're starting to see the level of intensity kind of pick up. I would say things are getting kind of chippy. You saw the Lakers and Grizzlies, even their little thing with Aldama and AD, shoving things, getting a little temperatures running hot a little bit. I think, especially when you look at the Warriors game and how it's kind of brewing between those two teams with the Timberwolves and the Warriors, I think it's bringing out more competitive fire earlier than you would 14 games into the season, which we probably wouldn't see something like this until probably middle toward the end of the season, closer to when seeding matters for the playoffs. But yeah, I mean, nothing. The concepts are good, and teams are definitely responding well to it, I'd say.
Okay, so to piggyback off that, do you think this is good for the NBA going forward, doing this little in-season tournament?
Is it good for the NBA? I say because teams are responding to it, and games are being played more competitively. It's bringing in more fans, especially now that we've seen the Warriors and the Timberwolves and how that whole altercation went. Everybody's going to be tuned in for that next game, because it's how's Rudy Gobert going to respond? What's Draymond Green going to do? How's he going to respond to that? Basically going toe-to-toe with the person he just choked out. Is he going to have to play more reserve? Is he going to be double down and say, I'm Draymond Green, and if someone's got a problem with it, they'll get put in the headlock too? We just don't know.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like this is a smart thing to do from a marketing perspective, because I think that, like I said, the NBA has a tough time getting early eyeballs, especially with the NFL and everything like that, kind of coinciding at the same time. So early NBA, I mean, doesn't really matter unless it's a marquee matchup. Unless you have the Celtics and the Lakers or the Celtics and the Bucks, why are you going to tune into the Timberwolves versus Warriors? But now they have a reason to watch that, because these games matter towards something greater. I think they should make the prize is something like $500,000 and a bonus for the players or something like that. I think they should up that a little bit. I want to say I think they should, whoever wins that conference should get home court advantage in the finals. I think that's a little bit too much to give them, because that's kind of, that's giving them a lot. But I think there should be, maybe not that much, but I think there should be some sort of big time prize for the winning team. If it was me and I was doing it, I think this is fine for this year, like you said. But I think if I was going to do this beyond I would probably reserve the last 2 weeks in November, first 2 weeks, or the first 2 weeks in December. Do all the pool play during those 2 weeks, because it does get a little bit confusing. Having to remember that Tuesdays and Fridays are the only nights where those games matter towards the in-season tournament. So I think they should do all the pool play at one designated time, and then maybe on Christmas have the finals game, and then have some bonus games, just to add to that. But I think it works so far to give us something different. I like that Adam Silver is forward thinking and thinking of ways to bring some interest to the game, interest to the NBA when they do have some falling numbers, especially because a lot of the stars are about to age out, and we're looking for that next big LeBron James, Steph Curry guy. And I don't know if we found him yet, but he definitely wants to have interest and eyeballs on the game and make the NBA a must-watch, entity, even if they're missing the stars. So as we talked about the chippiness and the some budding dislike between teams, we're going to segue into our final segment, where I'm going to ask you, do you think there's any building or budding rivalries right now in the NBA? Of course, back in the day, we had the Lakers, Celtics. That's always going to be, even though it's not that anymore, really. We had the Pistons against everybody, Bad Boy Pistons, the Bulls, Knicks. Maybe a little closer to now, you have the Cavs and Warriors of the 2010s. Even in 2000, you had the Lakers, Spurs, Suns, a couple of other ones. So do you think that there's any right now that are starting to build up? We saw the scuffle with the Timberwolves and the Warriors. So do you think that that's something that's building?
Right. One thing before I get into that point, I will say if I were to change anything with the in-season tournament, I would definitely, like you said, I would increase player revenue. I think $500,000 to the championship team. It's still kind of small compared to all the excess money that's being gained. I would like the idea of the mixing conferences. Like if you look at last game between the Bucks and the Mavs, like how electrifying that game was. I think just that idea of not only that, but like Wemby against Brandon Miller and the Hornets. Even though, again, you don't have a reason to tune into the Hornets and the Spurs, it's the idea of how electrifying was that summer league game when Brandon Miller took on Victor Wembanyama and the Spurs. Like little things like that, I think you could draw more interest to those like lower middle of the pack teams. And also I think point differential should not matter. I think it should be the best record should win that group. But now getting into the rivalry question, I'm honestly like the Warriors and the Timberwolves. I think from the in-season tournament alone, I think that is kind of like starting to like build into a rivalry. I'm not going to go jump the gun too soon and say it's a rivalry quite yet. I kind of go back to like Memphis and like how Ja Morant said, I'm fine in the West. And it just became like this tirade. Everybody was clamoring to see if Memphis was that good. And every time they played somebody in the West, it just looked like they proceeded to lose every game after that. But it was like the eye catch. Like everybody was drawn to that team because they were talking all this smack, and then everybody was trying to watch to see, can they back it up? Most of the time they didn't. But in terms of rivalries today, it's hard to say. Like I said, you could maybe say the Warriors and Timberwolves because of how Draymond are really going to respond to this, altercation. You got the Denver and LA, all that chirping from after the playoffs. It's kind of seeping into the regular season. Yeah, the Lakers got smacked opening night, but I still think Denver doesn't want to take the Lakers lightly in a 7-game series. So it's definitely going to be more to come on that. At least in today's NBA, everybody's too buddy-buddy. I don't really see a big, right? Like even the Clippers and Lakers, I think that was probably the closest thing we had to a rivalry, but it was so one-sided because the Clippers would beat the Lakers every time they played. So I don't see any rivalries in the NBA today. No.
So you don't think I think they want to build Chet and Wemby into some kind of big-time big man rivalry, but it was based on what we saw Tuesday. Yeah, that's not going to work. That was just a tragic game for the San Antonio Spurs, which has been par for the course this year. Yeah, I don't see many because of, like you said, unfortunately, social media messes that up because back in the day, I didn't know Charles Barkley and Michael Jordan were best friends because we had no way of knowing that. They didn't show it on the court. You would see them at the All-Star game kind of talking, but you thought those guys couldn't stand each other, but they're really best friends. So I think the fact that we see a lot of the players talking to each other and rooting for each other and things of that nature takes away. I think that's why I enjoyed the Grizzlies doing what they did last year. Like you said, John Morant and even Dylan Brooks, them, painting themselves as the villains. Because in any form of entertainment, if you got a good villain, you're going to want to watch that villain get beaten. And, the Grizzlies took a lot of beatings and now they're paying for it in the 2024 season. So, I just think, like you said, their teams are just too buddy-buddy. Players are too buddy-buddy. And, of course, the games are called so differently now that it doesn't allow things to really escalate to a point where teams are – and plus, I think that a lot of the conferences are very top-heavy. And, they just don't have that competitive spirit against these smaller teams. Back in the 80s where there were less teams and more teams vying for, certain spots, they had to go out there and go to war. Now, the Hornets ain't going to win nothing. The Wizards aren't going to win nothing, so they're not going to go out there and fight. They just getting them paychecks. So I just think that, unfortunately, we're not going to see any real, true rivalries anytime soon. Just because, guys, everybody's rooting for everybody. So with that said, this will conclude episode 8 of the GOATcast podcast. Again, we appreciate you guys. Please continue to like and subscribe to the channel. Just help us out. Like I said, I will link the other podcast pages, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, in the link in the description. So hopefully you guys come check us out on Wednesday. We will have Midweek Mayhem where we'll have a little Thanksgiving theme because it is that time of the year. So we're gonna say what we're thankful for in the NBA. So come check us out. Any parting words from you, Big Nine?
Nah, just everybody stay safe and just everybody try to remember that find something to be thankful for. Exactly. In this world we're living in today.
Exactly.
That's it for me. I'm about to go be thankful for this TV in the living room right after we get off this thing, so I'm cool.
I'm gonna be thankful for some food because I'm about to go eat my lunch right after this. So once again, thank you guys for checking us out, and we will be back on Wednesday. So GOATcast podcast out.
Peace.